It's interesting how we're almost at the end of another year, and what a year it's been. 2020 started off with a lot of predictions of a fantastic year in property. Remember, we were coming off the end of 2019 where property markets around Australia were very strong. And then the predictions changed to doom and gloom because of COVID. And it wasn't just the naysayers. A lot of economists, bank economists, were suggesting property doom as well. Now, it's been said the role of an economist is to explain to you tomorrow why what they predicted yesterday didn't come true today. And this is a very apt description of the behaviour of many of the economists and all those other experts chasing a headline who are very noisy in the media in their attempts to exploit the pandemic for publicity. But to all of you who saw the dark side, you were wrong. Now, I've always had an optimistic outlook, and over the last 20 years I've suggested that no matter how bleak things look, we'll muddle through it. And muddle through it we did. Of course, there was great support from incentive programs from the governments, and now it's become clear that our property markets have turned the corner and they're going to perform much more strongly over the next couple of years. Now, I'm not downplaying the many economic and health challenges still ahead of us, the unemployment challenges, and the personal challenges this terrible year has left for many of us. I also believe life's going to be very different moving forward, and that's part of what we're going to discuss in today's episode of the Michael Yardney podcast. I'm going to share some lessons that you can learn from what happened to airline pilots. Oh, and it's probably not what you think, by the way. And then I'm going to have a chat with Brett Warren about the suggested trend to working from home and tree change and sea change and how realistic that could be. And as always, I'm going to share a mindset moment with you to maybe allow you to think a little bit differently about life and your situation. So welcome to today's episode of the Michael Yardney podcast.
Welcome to the Michael Yardney podcast, where twice each week you will learn a number of new ideas regarding success, property investment and money in around 30 minutes. Our show is brought to you by Metropole, who specialise in helping you grow, protect and pass on your wealth through strategic property and wealth advice. Now here's your host, Michael Yardney, Australia's authority in wealth creation through property, who has been voted one of Australia's top 50 most influential thought leaders.
Have you ever thought about what the bad news for airline pilots may mean for you? Now, what am I on about? Well, let me explain. Just look what happened to Qantas. Look what happened to Virgin. Like many other businesses, they're being crushed by the COVID-19 economic slowdown. Qantas lost billions of dollars and shed thousands of employees. Virgin went broke, and similarly, its employees, including pilots, are facing layoffs or job losses. Now, while a customer service officer or a gate attendant could easily transition into a customer service position in another industry, what does a pilot do? How do their special skills translate to a new industry? Well, what's this got to do with you? Well, of course, pilots aren't the only people with high-paying, prestigious jobs based on skills that are narrowly marketable should their industry slow down. We're seeing it with chefs. We're seeing it with entertainers. They're suffering. Even earlier on this year, many doctors, surgeons were temporarily out of business to preserve medical capacity for COVID victims. What I'm trying to suggest is that this can happen to anyone with very little warning. So, do you have skills that are transferable? And if so, which industries are expanding that would even take you? Now, I know we're slowly working our way through coronavirus, but this doesn't have to be due to coronavirus. If you think about it, it's really no different when an illness, when an accident, when a disability or a severe life event takes you out of action. If you trade time for dollars, even for a high income, that makes you vulnerable. And even if you've got insurance or maybe some money stashed away for a rainy day, that might not absorb the entire impact. Of course, the key to security and resilience in your life is to have a cash machine. By that I mean you should be having a portfolio of investments that provide you with enough income to live on, and actually more, whether you work or not. Now, if you've been following my podcast, reading my blogs, you know for years I've been talking about the concept of building a cash machine, one that's going to provide you with income whether you choose to work or not. And the right time to start building a cash machine is right now. Well, actually, that's wrong. The best time would have been to start 20 years ago to build your cash machine. The second best time is right now. Now, somebody very clever once said the time to repair a roof is when the sun is shining. So what I'm suggesting to you is to consider looking after your financial future right now. And I hope the sun is shining in your life and it's sunny. But I know for some people there are some storm clouds hanging over them. In fact, maybe some raindrops are already splattering around you. So wherever you are now in your stage of your life, it's smart to use what you have to create resilient wealth to shelter yourself from the tough times, whether they're on the horizon or maybe even on your doorstep now. And the good news is that a properly structured property portfolio has got a strong track record of resilience through challenging times. We've seen it in all the other downturns and we've seen it during the current challenging times. Now, the bad news is it takes time, it takes money, it takes knowledge, relationships and credit. And I'm going to say it again, it actually particularly takes time to build a resilient property portfolio. And I know for some people listening to this, you're going to be short on one or many of those things. But don't be discouraged. Now, I don't know your personal circumstances. Maybe all you can do at the moment is hunker down and get through the challenging times we're going through. But I also know that now, for many Australians, is the right time to get your ducks in a row and look after your future. What the pandemic, the social unrest, the recession should have taught you is that you can't just count on good times all the time. It's your job to protect your financial future. You can't count on other people. So now's a good time to take action and set yourself up to get ready for the next stage of the property cycle, which will probably come sooner rather than later, or get yourself structured so that when you are in a better financial position, that you can move forward. By what I mean by structured, you set a plan up, have a strategic property plan so you know what you've got to do. How do you do this? It's pretty hard to do on your own, especially at this time in the cycle. So why not have a chat with my team at Metropole? We don't have any properties for sale, but we offer strategic advice, and that's going to give you some direction. It's going to help you get some certainty. It'll help you get the results you want. And you can trust my team at Metropole to help outperform the average property investor and give you and your family the financial freedom you deserve. See, in challenging times like this, you need an experienced advisor that has a holistic approach to wealth creation. You need more than a buyer's agent. They just will take the orders. And we have got buyer's agents in our team. But you first of all got to have a plan, and you need more than the property strategist. You need somebody who can put all the bits and pieces together. That's what I mean by a holistic approach. And that's what we do at Metropole. So why not go to metropole.com.au, have a look, leave your details, and whether it's strategic property advice, buyer's agency, wealth advisory, financial planning, property management, renovations or development, my suggestion is, despite what's going on in the outside world, as I said before, get your ducks in a row, get yourself organised, because it's your duty to build your cash machine. You've got to look after your future, and there's no better time than now to start doing that, or to see how your current plans are going, if they're going to get you where you want to go.
Now here's Michael's mindset message. Remember, a change in your thinking will lead to a change in your life.
In my mindset message today, I'd like to share with you what I think is probably the biggest lesson I learned from Jim Rohn. And you know I quote my mentor very often, but he called it the great challenge in life. He said, here's the great challenge in life. You can have more than you have got now because you can become more than you are. I could stop there, and that's a great enough lesson, but let me repeat it. You can have more than you've got because you can become more than you are. And Jim Rohn said he found that your income seldom exceeded your own personal development. And I fully agree with that. You see, once in a while, you can take a lucky jump. You can buy the right property and the market suddenly picks up, or you can get into a business that suddenly changes. But you get an inheritance, you win the lottery. But I've seen it over and over again that unless you grow out to where it is, you end up going back to where you are. Somebody once said if you took all the money in the world and divided it equally amongst everyone, it would soon be back into the same pockets again. And I agree with that. However, you can have more. because you can become more. You see, here's how the other side of the coin reads. Unless you change how you are, you'll always have what you've got. The major thing that makes a difference is what you do. It's the human effort that counts. So in order to have more, you need to become more. I remember Jim Rohn saying that some people said, if I had a job, I could really pour it on, but I've got this lousy job, so it's not going to work. I'm not going to work hard at it. If you've got that philosophy, Jim Rohn said, you're destined to stay in that bad job. Jim Rohn said, some people say, if I had lots of money, I'd be really generous, but I don't have much money, so I'm not generous. And he went on to say, see, you've got to change that philosophy or you'll never have lots of money. So my message to you is, unless you change, it won't change. Amazingly, however, when you throw out the blame list and start to become more of yourself, you learn more, you grow more, then all of a sudden, everything is going to change around you. What's the new working from home phenomenon going to do to property prices? If you've been following the headlines, you know that more of us are working from home, and the speculation is that more of us are going to continue working from home once COVID's gone away. The media is full of headlines about what this is going to do to property values, and is it going to lead to a boom in regional and seaside towns? Well, to give his thoughts on that, I'm going to have a chat with my business partner, Brett Warren, Director of Metropole. Welcome, Brett.
Hi, Michael. Good to be with you.
Well, Brett, I remember reading similar headlines after the global financial crisis and after the recession last time. When I remember last time around in the early 90s, the recession we had then, everyone said, oh, last person leaving Victoria, turn off the lights because everyone's going to Queensland. There was the thought that there was going to be a total exodus and Victoria wouldn't ever grow again. Well, look what's happened since. After the global financial crisis, people talked about sea change and tree change. And while a few people did that, the majority didn't. Now, see, certainly there's going to be some changes in how we live moving forward. But what is your view on this? What do you think is going to happen to how we live?
Yeah, look, it's really interesting, isn't it? It seems to pop up every 10 or 12 years when we want to hit the reset button and head to the beach or head to a regional town to relax and get away from it all. But in reality, it's vastly different. They're really minority trends that have occurred. And I guess some of the research that I've done to understand a little bit better is, the first thing is really to understand what's feasibly possible. How many people could feasibly, work from home? I guess the first thing I did was go to ABS, and I found out that probably about 30% of Australians work remotely in one way or another. So that's the current 1/3 of our workforce. And I also followed up to find out a study done in Chicago and Norway found that realistically about 36 or 37% of the workforce could reasonably work remotely. So there's only really a 6 or 7% increase there. So that's the first thing. It's not a considerable amount. And the second thing is, out of those 37%, how many of those will actually make the change? Humans are quite obviously habitual, and they're a bit resistant to change as well. So they're two factors that I looked into.
I was surprised with the high percentage of people that work from home. But if you think about it, a lot of tradespeople do. They work from the back of their ute. A lot of solopreneurs do. People who've got gyms, mowing franchises, or tradespeople. So that's not unusual. So the next question is, how many others can work from home, as you say? And clearly, there's lots of industries who can't. If you work in a factory, if you're in manufacturing, there's lots of people who are not able to. So there's only going to be a small number of people who are going to work from home more often. But only today I had a chat with somebody who was telling me that his staff are saying to him, hey, I can work from home now. I actually am considering maybe not coming back to the office. Can we keep working like this now that COVID is slowly winding itself down? And the interesting thing is, if you can work from home in one of the suburbs of Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, Perth, why can't your job be taken by somebody working remotely from the Philippines or India at a third the price? So be careful for what you wish for. Don't necessarily tell your boss that he doesn't need somebody to come into the office, Brett.
No, absolutely. You don't want to make yourself replaceable. I think that's a really, really good point. And I think the other point you make also is, look, while there are certainly things that can be done from home, not everyone will choose to always work from home. There's going to be times that are required in the office, and certain people will want to work in the office as well. So I think that's a really good point.
I think one of the other things is the way you will train your staff, the way you learn is actually, well, sure, you can learn a bit on the internet, sure, you can watch YouTube videos, but really, if you think about how you learned most things in life, you actually were told how to do things, you were shown how to do things, and then you actually did them, and you actually observed how people did them, and then you copied them. So that's one of the best ways we learn. So moving forward, if people don't work within an office environment, it's going to be much harder for them. In particular for young people starting off where they need to impress their bosses and they've got to actually make their mark in the business. So clearly there's some industries where they've got the lowest chance: retail, agriculture, transport. You can't work from home. On the other hand, sure, there are some areas like finance and insurance and communication where a larger percentage can, but that doesn't necessarily mean they will. So I guess what you're getting at is, Brett, why chase that minority of potential people who may move to other locations? Why fight the big trends?
Look, and that's something we say quite often, isn't it, Michael? To quantify that, I would obviously say, why worry about what the 30 or 37% of our workforce may do when we clearly know what 63% of our workforce is going to do moving forward? So I think there's a level of safety in that, a level of safety in numbers and understanding those trends. And I guess these are times also, Michael, as I mentioned before, where people are looking for something different. They may go off trend, or they may look at different options. They fail to stay the course because they really think this is a reset, and they need to look for something new and maybe a new trend that'll pop up. So we quite often see these clickbait headlines come up a lot of this time, don't we?
Sure. So now, people listening to this, if you're thinking about moving your own home, that's very, very different. But I guess what we're talking about are property investors, not to chase the next hotspot or the next trend because it hasn't worked. Because, Brett, there's still lots of reasons why most people, despite the fact that they can move, are going to choose not to move. There's going to be still lots of draw cards to staying in the big smoke.
Look, there certainly is, and especially with those middle to inner ring suburbs we spoke about, they're always in high demand because they've got really, really good schools and education, and that's important, and that's not going to change. They've got lifestyle precincts, high walkability, public transport. It's just so easy to get around. And I think if you're looking at the next generation, I think we call them the generation of instant gratification. They want to push a button and have Uber Eats rock up their door in 5 minutes, and they want to get a coffee in the morning or go out for a nice meal. It's all on their doorstep, and they're not willing to do that when you move out to regional Australia. And they're taking a bit of a step backwards, and they won't be comfortable doing that.
Now, it's very hard when you only have two options for your Uber Eats if you live in a small country town, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So the thought is, don't chase the latest hotspot. Focus on areas that are going to outperform the averages, and they're still going to remain the inner and middle ring suburbs of our capital cities. Because as a property investor, your job is to get capital growth. As a property investor, you're going to want your properties to increase in value so that you can buy more properties. So I don't buy properties for cash flow. I buy properties to buy more properties. In other words, the last property investment I bought, I didn't put any money down. I used equity from my existing property portfolio. I didn't have to show serviceability. I used the serviceability from my rental income. And to do that, you've got to have capital growth. So the drivers of capital growth, and there are multiple ones, include things like population growth, or more exactly, how many new households are formed that require accommodation. Wages growth. We look for areas where people's wages are going up above the average so that they can afford to pay more. You're looking for supply and demand in a location. You're looking for the sort of location where there's more demand than there is supply, again, to push up property values. Livability, amenity, and that's going to be more important than ever now as people have realised the value of those things. We look at the demographics in the area. We look at what infrastructure changes may improve the area. And as a property investor, you're also, of course, going to want to know the other big picture economic drivers like yields, availability of finance, interest rates. And if you look at those things, Brett, you're only going to get a few of those in regional areas or country towns as opposed to the big smoke.
I think that's a really, really valuable point you make there, Michael. I often get people talking to me about infrastructure in isolation. There's a new highway or a new runway, there's a new library or a new university or hospital. So absolutely, there's these types of things in isolation, but it's not until you know the 5 to 7 wealth accelerators that are going to enhance that capital growth. And rather than cherry picking one or two, actually you're having those 5, 6, 7 pillars that are going to help your property grow in value. So 100%.
I think the other one, as we said a moment ago, is also demographics, because we found in this downturn, some areas have suffered more than others. So the inner apartment markets haven't done well at all, as the investors are having challenges. In the outer suburbs of our capital cities, some of the first home buyers who bought a while ago and overcommitted, or to some of those people who unfortunately have lost their jobs or the ability to work as much as they wanted, properties in those areas are suffering. But in the inner and middle ring, more affluent suburbs, areas where people have got a lot of equity in their home, they've held their value very well. But Brett, I remember you did a study of this a number of years ago, looking at what happened over time in various suburbs, and nothing's changed, has it?
No, it doesn't. And again, it's the majority trends that you stick to. And we're investing for homeowners. We don't invest for investors. So it's really important to understand how homeowners are choosing to live. And there's no doubt that a period of time there was a trend on for the younger generation to move towards that CBD and rent. But now we're, I guess, green space and lifestyle and having that space in apartments, that maybe that extra room or, an extra 5 or 10 square meters for a personal space in the corner or something like that is really becoming a premium. And you just can't find that in the CBD. So they're reverting out to those inner and middle ring suburbs. There's a finite availability of land in those pockets. And as you pointed out, demand is slowly increasing. And that's why our markets in those areas, particularly at the moment, are fairly resilient.
I can see moving forward, there's going to be less demand for 1-bedroom and in some ways even 2-bedroom apartments in the high-rise areas. Lots of young families are going to be starting off in at least a 2-bedroom apartment rather than 1-bedroom, one or a studio, because they're going to need that extra room to either have as a Zoom room or to work from home or to be a bit separate. The lessons will eventually fade away, but in the short term, maybe for the next 5 or 10 years, people aren't going to forget 2020, and they are going to be a little bit more cautious with their money, but they're also going to be much more careful in the sort of accommodation they look for, Brett.
Yeah, certainly. And I think this has brought a lot of things forward that we may have realised in the next 4 or 5 years. But these kinds of lockdowns, people reflect and really find out their values and what's important to them. And certainly being cooped up in a small apartment is one thing that I think they'll definitely learn from.
So we started off asking, is there going to be a trend for people moving to working from home and therefore being able to live in other locations? Yeah, but it's only going to be a small trend and unlikely to make a major impact on our property markets. So thanks for your time, Brett. Look forward to having a chat again with you real soon.
Thanks, Michael. Good to be with you again.
Well, thanks for spending the time with me listening to this week's podcast, and I hope you got some benefit from it. If you did, please share the message with somebody else who would also get some benefit. By now, I hope you know that my intention is to help as many people as possible develop a level of financial fluency, financial independence by understanding about property, about money, about wealth. So spread the word, and I'd love you to leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen to this show. In between my twice-a-week show, you can catch up with me on social media. Just look for Michael Yardney. And by the way, there's 3.5 years of old shows that you could listen to as well. Just download them on your podcast app, listen at 1.5 times speed. I still sound pretty good. By the way, that's how I listen to podcasts, because there's lots of gold in those old shows as well. I look forward to catching up with you again real soon. In the meantime, have a great week. Make it a great week.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Michael Yardney podcast, which was brought to you by Metropole, who help their clients grow, protect, and pass on their wealth through strategic property and wealth advice. If you like what you heard and don't already subscribe, you'll find us on iTunes or on your favourite Android app as the Michael Yardney Podcast. Watch out for our next show, which comes to you twice a week, and you'll learn some new ideas about property investment, success and money in around 30 minutes. To get more of Michael's thoughts, go across to www.propertyupdate.com.au and sign up for his daily morning briefing, and you'll hear from not only Michael but a group of leading property success and money experts. And just a reminder that the information you heard in this show today is general educational advice and not specific investment advice, as we don't know your personal circumstances. If you're looking for specific advice, why not ask the team at Metropole to help you?